welcome back. Chapter 5, the two great realms of being. All potters know that the clay they work with has two fundamental states. Its original unformed or unordered state, and the other which is formed or ordered into things, pots, frogs, jars, and what have you. This is the same true of our reality. So all that is real that falls into one of the two of these fundamental divisions. By fundamental, it is meant that there is no possibility of further division. One division corresponds to a mode of reality that is lacking in form, objectively, definition, etc. And we will call this division of chaos the subjective realm. Okay? The other division corresponds to the mode of reality in which energy, matter has been ordered into forms and objects. And this division is called the objective realm. Now, due to the fact that it is in its state that is objective, thoughts, emotions, physical things are then found. So the being that it is in the synthesis of life in both rhythms is called the neter in the Kemetic tradition. And it goes beyond the concept of the supreme Godhead that is used by most spiritual traditions to represent the supreme being. Now, all the manifestations of itself through which it creates and maintains in the world, including the Godhead, the Nebuchadnezzar, the Lord of the world, they're all are called the Neteru. It is easy to see that this term is the origin of Latin terms, which means natara, neutral, eternitas, eternity, etc. Now, unfortunately, more space cannot be devoted to this subject, but discerning readers will see in the Kemetic notion about the Supreme Being a deeper understanding than is to be found in other traditions who limit it to the subjective realm. Now, for our purpose, a useful synonym for the world is the objective realm. And in this book, the term objective, when referring to the world, manifested reality, etc., will also appear capitalized to distinguish our usage from one of its popular denotations, impartial, impersonal, unconditioned view, etc. The term kin to object from the prefix ob refers to all that is or has form, and therefore denotes all that is perceptible mentally or physically. Now, in the same manner, we will qualify the term subjective. Excluded is the denotation of partiality, conditioned view, personal, etc. So the term kin in such terms such as submerged, substrata, substance, etc., from the sub So submerged, substrata, substance, sub. So it refers to all of this is under the therefore incapable of perceived. So we're going to say it again. We have objective, which is the prefix, ob, which refers to that having form, being perceptible mentally or physical. And then we have that subjective, which is excluded, the denotation of partially conditioned, the view in the personal view of itself, meaning sub, ob, merged. Oh, you'll catch on. So when we look at the term kin, again, terms as submerged, kin submerged. Again, we'll break these down in more illustrations as we continue on. So we have these two fundamental divisions in the realm of being. One which is submerged, for example, into perceptible, and the other is perceptible. So we have imperceptible and the other is perceptible. So the imperceptibility of the subjective realm is based on the fact that in it, there are no objects. The derivation of the name objective realm from that fact that it places these objects. So if it has objects in objective realm, then there's places of objects, which makes it more obvious. The importance of these concepts will be realized from the consideration of the fact that most people limit their acknowledgement of reality to what is perceptible, yet not only is reality not limited to the perception objective region, it originates beyond in its subjective realm. Again, I broke these down on my website. You can catch me on YouTube under Cozy by You. This chapter is called Spirituality versus Religion. But what it does is it breaks down the subjective and the objective realm in a PowerPoint type presentation. So with that being seen on YouTube under my page, this will give it more of a depth explanation of what the subjective and the objective means when you're breaking down the terminology for it. So the subjective realm, if there are no things in the subjective realm when there, then what is there? If there's nothing in there, then what is it? So it must be comprehended. So first of all, that all the objects making up the world are modifications of an external subsisting energy or matter. As the terms exist refers to the objectified reality, the term subsist must be used to refer to subjective elements in a homogeneous and unmodified state in the subjective realm. So therefore, it must be understood that where this is absolutely no differentiation, there cannot be no perception, okay? So on the contrary to the characteristics of Western scientific thinking, the modifications of this universal underlying substance, subjective energy or matter, into the set of related things we call the world does not occur by chance. It is the result of conscious, intelligent action. Now, although imperceptible, lacking form, the conscious and the will of being nectar also reside in the subjective realm. So with the full consciousness of itself as infinite potential of expression, the nectar's wills its energy, its matter to modify itself as the infinitude of forms manifesting in as the world. The objective realm. So let's note, therefore, that the creative elements of being are imperceptible. Sof and Or. Again, Sof corresponds to matter. Aura is the root of aura. Aura is the root of aura, which equals light. So Sof and Aura are the Cainite names given to the unmanifested, undifferentiated energy and matter in the subjective realm. While Sof corresponds to the undifferentiated feminine polarity, we designate it as matter. And again, Or, which is the root of aura, equals light, is the undifferentiated masculine polarity we designated as energy. Now they are the substance and energy underlying all forms and activities in the world. Now in the Kamatian tradition, the matter side of the subjective realm is referred to as Nu. Okay? And the energy polarity Ra, pronounced Ra'u, hence aura, radiation, etc. In the Kemetic Book of Knowing the Manifestations of Ra, which was written back in the 2500 BC, although the doctrine is much older, here's what we have. The word of the Nebuchadnezzar, the Lord of the world, which he spoke after coming into being, I am he who came into being in the form of the infinite power of manifestation, Ketra. I became the creator of what came into being. After my coming into being, many were the things which came into being, coming forth from my mouth, words of power, not existed heaven, non-numinal division of the objective realm. That means not existed earth, the phenomenon division of the objective realm, not had yet been created the things of the earth, and creeping things in that place. I raised them out of Nu, from the state of inactivity of energy. Not found I a place to stand wherein. I radiated words of power with my will. I laid a foundation in the law, Ma'u, and I made all attributes. I was alone, for not had I spit out the form of Shu, which is the thermal yang principle of the world, not had I emitted Tefnut, which is the moisture hydrogenoid yin principle of the world, not existed another who worked with me. I made a foundation by the means of my will, and there came into the being the multitude of things. I became from God one, God's three. That is the form out of myself. Now this context continues, but with the creation of men and other things in the world throughout the interactions of Shu, which is the yang, and Tefnut, which is the yin. So So we have yin, yang, shu, yang, tefnut, yin. So besides the corroborating what has been said thus far in this chapter, it introduces a very important point that cannot be passed up. So here we have a written confirmation that monotheism, existed in ancient Egypt much earlier than the birth of Abraham and over 1,000 years before the Akhenaten and Moses. It's very interesting. So we'll go on into the Bantu. The South African nations, traditions, subjective matter is Netu. In the Yoruba, it is Ala Domare. In the Akan of West Africa, it is Nyami, etc. But let's paraphrase the above by noting that all that was, is, and can ever be are all modifications of the undifferentiated energy or matter and unconditioned consciousness will of subjective being. Therefore, all that we have been, now are, and can ever be are modifications of this original subjective being. Now, we can therefore make the following conclusions about ourselves. 1. As the energy or matter, like unmolded clay, is undifferentiated, for example, not restricted to a particular form, it can assume any shape. Its power of attainment is omnipotent. If the energy or matter making up our being is rooted in this energy or matter, we also partake of its omnipotence. Of course, in kind, but not magnitude. 2. As the consciousness, will of subjective being is not conditioned by any limitations of energy or matter, and as there are no forms there to do so, its potential to will is unlimited. It is therefore omniscient. As our conscious will is rooted to the consciousness will of subjective being, we also partake in its quality. 3, as there are no limitations of time and space in the subjective realm, being is therefore external and infinite. For example, it's omnipresent. We also partake in this quality as well. Now, this may seem to fly in the face of experience, but objections are soon dealt with by noting the fact that there are many people with spiritual abilities that are out of the ordinary, and this is one of the chief roles of the cosmogony. It enables you to know what is ahead in the field of human growth. Like a map, it guides you to where you haven't been. It keeps you from defining, delimiting, crystallizing yourself around the present level of mankind's evolutionary attainment or your growth to date. The defining of man in terms of the common faculties that mankind has thus far evolved is the chief impediment to further growth. And we'll go on and break down the objective realm now. So it is not enough to know that the world objective reality is a modification of subjective being. Unconditioned consciousness and undifferentiated energy matter. We cannot understand our being, the purpose of life, and how we should live unless we have a clear understanding of how and why the subject being creates the world. Objective reality. So let's begin by recalling the notion that energy, matter, in the subjective realm is not differentiated into forms, the world, and that there are no things to be perceived, then consciousness can only be conscious of being conscious. Now, this state of consciousness can be achieved and has been achieved by humans, and it is called the Kamatian meditation system of the Dietetim, or the Temu, the negative being, and in the Indus Valley system, the Asmarpajanita, or the Sarvikalpa Nirvana. The pure consciousness without objects of consciousness. An in-depth look at the subject will show that in the subjective realm, there can only be one being. For there to be others, there must be differentiations of energy or matter into the bodies, which serve as the means of separating each being from the other. Now, infinite and external, unwelled by a body, this being is all alone. It is one without a second. As a thought, it is a differentiation of the energy matter. It isn't even thinking. That one thought, just like stay as quiet as you can, because that one thought, that's going to start to move. So it's not even in the thought, I am conscious. No things, no needs, no identity. So the Incarnation tradition being on this level, it is called the Deity, the Amen. Meditate on your being conscious, and you will get a glimpse of the fact that what's in you is conscious, is itself imperceptible and concealed. Now, the subjective, therefore, is the hidden plane of reality where being dwells. All manifestations are the differentiations of the energy matter of this level, the objectifications of the substantive basis of all forms. So the reason, therefore, for the creation of the world, the differentiation of the original energy matter into things, is to give being experience. The subjective realm is life. The objective is living. Being versus doing. Again, the subjective realm is life. The objective is living. Being is living. Being versus doing. So the slightest thought, the faintest feeling is already an objectification of energy, matter, a world in itself. So again, all alone, without thoughts, without experience, no, me, and you and it. The subjective creates and differentiates its energy, matter into the world that it may have experienced. I like to use the following metaphor, although it is kind of crude and somewhat inaccurate. Imagine yourself all alone, suspended somewhere, pretty much nowhere, but you're in the dark, bottomless, and surfaceless expanse of water. Bored to death, aren't you? But one day you realize that your body is composed of billions of cells. So you transfer your consciousness into several millions of your cells, and suddenly you are no longer alone. And the adventure begins. And suppose you forgot that you are not really the cells. And then the drama begins and goes on until you have been knocked around pretty good by some bacteria and viruses too, and the spiritualization begins. Yes, all alone, without thoughts, feelings, or a second with whom to interact, the subjective being differentiates a portion of its infinite energy matter into an enclosed circle. So within it, it differentiates its energy, matter, the Nu, the Ra, the Soul, the Aura, into billions of galaxies. And with their trillions of stars, and how many of there are on Earth, and how many Earths, in the matter, okay, so basically, it's telling me that there's more Earths. But in many of the latter, it fills with people and transfers its consciousness into them. And the adventure begins temporarily, perhaps for a short period of billions of years, but the body incarnated consciousness forgets that it is not really these things within which it dwells on these earths. Then it tries, it's like it tires of the knocks and the journey back begins. Wow. But not until, of course, every single ray of incarnated consciousness has been liberated from the earthly tomb. Let's see. Men who have found the way back and stopped at the edge. And the Kamatians traditions are also called Usar. In the Indus Valley traditions, Buddha Hisavastas, they are the only ones who truly deserve the title sage. The mapping of the way down and back is the function of a cosmogony. The transition from absolute undifferentiation into the subjective realm to earthly existence does not proceed in one step. It is graduated progression designed to maintain a connection at each and every step between the qualities of the subjective being and the purpose of creating the world. So that is to say that each step forward, the manifestation of earthly existence is qualified to maintain an equilibrium between being and doing, life and living, the non-thingness of subjective being, and the infinite numbers of the things of the earthly plane, the infiniteness and externalness of the subjective realm, and the infiniteness in time and space of the objective realm. Beautiful. So the next meeting we'll be talking about cosmogenesis of the objective realm. We'll be going into explaining the numenial plane, the nominal, phenomenal and noumenal plane. So stay tuned to our next one as we get into the cosmogenesis of the objective realm. Thank you for tuning in.